Hey everybody, this is Perch. Do you need to love a character in order to write them well? The answer is no. Now, it doesn't hurt. This is almost the inverse of another topic we've talked about, which is should you keep people who love characters from writing the characters because they'll have blind spots? I think that's ridiculous. And thus, I think the inverse is also true. If somebody hates a character, or I really can't stand that character, but they're a professional, they can write it well, they've got a good pitch, you let them write the character. This is being a professional, which I know is a weird and unusual concept for comics, but professionals are able to put aside personal feelings and create a quality product that will sell. In many cases, a lot of people, hey, put it this way. If you go to your local fast food place, you're getting a McDonald's burger, all right? I understand it's not the perfect analogy, but work with me. Chances are the person making your burger doesn't love what they're doing. Chances are they don't love making that burger. Now, I'm sure there's some people in fast food places who do, that just love making the burgers. But by and large, many of them are there because they need the money, they need the job. But the professionalism, helps them not burn the burger, not toss the meat around on the floor, not put crap all over the grill. They're making a quality product to that extent. And that's kind of the example here. Now, comics, like any creative endeavor, is a little bit more complicated than making burgers, for sure. But people who have a good story to tell, a good hook, a good concept, something that is maybe a little bit, of a dynamic and interesting story idea. Professionals can use that for whatever the story hook is, regardless of the history of the character. Now, this was brought into some focus recently, and we've had him on the show numerous times. I've interviewed him. I'm not putting words in his mouth. Jeff Thorne, at one point in the past, prior to, I think, ever thinking he was going to write Green Lantern or whether there's no job in play, said, "I hate Hal Jordan." Now, I'm not in his head, but looking at many of Jeff's other tweets, he's sarcastic in a sense. I don't take everything that's written on Twitter with dead seriousness. I don't believe that this is somebody who's sitting like in the basement with like a Hal Jordan doll, slowly pulling the threads apart and poking hot needles into the, that's not when he says I hate. Hate is a strong word, but hate is also can be a casual word. Again, I don't know the guy, but if you look at his tweets, nothing comes across as a deep-seated, rage-filled, maniacal craziness. And when you talk to him, and you've heard on the shows, he's referencing all kinds of things about DC past, things with Legion of Superheroes, things with comic books. This isn't somebody who just wandered into comics one day and decided, I think I'll try DC. This is somebody who I think you could put toe-to-toe with a number of other comic historians and could stand his ground with trivia on we'll do that someday. No, we won't do that someday. But regardless, Jeff Thorne comes in to write Green Lantern. And we've talked about this kind of hit piece article that comes out and everything else. But the question is, and this is the key question, forget about all the noise, social media, articles from disreputable websites, all those kinds of things. And the question is a story good? Now, when you open up Green Lantern, are you getting like a very poorly written Hal Jordan? Are you getting like Hal Jordan come around and it's clear that the author hates the character because the character is just written with contempt and is just, there's all the scummy facets of Hal Jordan come about. Like characters are like dismissing him, and it's just. Are you getting that, or are you getting a story where Hal Jordan appears, but barely? This is what we got, where he's treated like a normal member of the Green Lantern Corps, just and a honored member. He's having a conversation with Jon Stewart that sounds like both men respect each other. They make a little joke about the Thangarians, as you do, and it's fine. There's nothing much to it. I think that one thing that social media and clickbait news and all the rest has taught us, and it's an ugly lesson, is don't just sit and see what happens. Predict what's going to happen. And then if you predict loud enough and angry enough and aggressive enough, then fuck it. You don't even need to know what happens. You can just just stick to your prediction. It is amazing to me that there's people who go on, I see them pop up in comments who clearly are not reading the comics because they're making statements that are 100% wrong, that are not factually accurate. I'm not talking about opinions. I'm talking about not remotely correct. Like, oh, of course, I saw some people are like, of course, Marvel kills off Eddie Brock. It's a woke company and wants to get rid of all the white men. It's like Eddie Brock came back to life in the end, and the entire 5th issue of King in Black, the final issue of that series, was Eddie Brock, owning Null on every page, so much to the point that it was like a squash match. It was like Goldberg beating up some jobber. There wasn't, it was almost dull of an end, to be honest. But yet you still see these people like, oh, Marvel's killing off all the white men. It's like you're not reading the actual end comic. You're not actually. What you're saying is factually wrong. Now, if you came in and said, Marvel hates these characters because they write them poorly, okay, that's a matter of opinion. You can stand on that. But you can't say that, this character is dead and they've gotten rid of him when they clearly have not. You're behind the times, And I think that there's a lot of that goes on all sides, by the way. It's the same effect, by the way, that a lot of people complain about and argue about, of like, hey, the comics on Indiegogo are all racist comics. It's like, well, that's factually not true. You can pick them up, you can read them. That is factually not true. Yet you're going to continue to kind of say that as if it is true, when you're not actually doing any of the work to look into it. That's the silliness of, this is my prediction. This is where I think, I just know this is going to happen, and I'm just going to continue to double and triple down on it and just scream and shout and have a tantrum like a child about, all these Indiegogo comics are racist. I mean, it's absurd to say things like that, yet people do. So to the question at hand, do you need to love the character in order to write it well, to write that character well? Well, I think it helps. I think because of this reason. It's not the love. It's the, if you love something, you tend to invest more into it. You tended to spend more time looking into the background, thinking about different scenarios, really taking the time to learn about the personality of the character. I think that is, a true statement. And generally, people who love something invest more of themselves than people who hate it. I think that's common. Now, that doesn't mean it's foolproof. There's a lot of people who love things that have a terrible take on characters. Odds are you'll probably do a better job if you have some love for the character. But the best thing to have, in my opinion, over love or hate, is respect. And it is possible to dislike a character and yet still respect him or her or it. And this is, I think, the case, at least for my limited perception. I am going off some conversations I've had, but more importantly, my own eyes reading the comic. I think that based on his own comments, Jeff Thorne doesn't care for Hal Jordan as a character, doesn't like him. However, respects the character, or maybe respects the job, or a combo of both. And so you're getting a character that's written with the intention to sell. A character that's not going to isolate part of the fan base. I think that's what's necessary. I think respect is something that kind of becoming old-fashioned, but it's something that is key when you're making a comic. If you're making a comic with somebody else's toys, and in this case, all the people writing the big two anyway, are playing with someone else's toys. They're playing with a corporation's toys. Then you owe it to be respectful to those toys. You owe it to tell a story as creatively and dynamically as you can that's going to excite as big an audience as you can, as big meaning as many people, left, right, male, female, everything else, just as many people as you can, to make the money, which is what the business is all about. And part of that respect comes into staying true to their personality that's been established, doing a good job of setting them up in a situation where maybe there's some future aspects to the character that future creators get to play with. There's a lot of really incredible ways that you can respect and grow comics. And to be clear, by the way, I suspect a number of people who may disagree with this video have already dipped out by now, but I think that there's a large number of writers for the big two that do not respect these characters, bluntly. And I know this is a controversial take, and this is the kind of thing that puts me on one side or the other, one particular side of this whole argument. But when I pick up things and I see characters being written with zero acknowledgement to their past, doing things, saying things that are wildly different than what's been established, I don't think you have to be a slave to continuity, but I do think you need to respect it. There's that word again. I think you should try and respect what's come before you and tell the best story you can. And I think you can do that regardless of personal love or hate of those characters. I think you can respect is something you can do even when you dislike a character. Put it this way. I would say I'm not a big ghostwriter. I don't like the character ghostwriter. I don't know why. It never took for me. I don't like that character. If Marvel came to me tomorrow and said, "We want you to do a limited series on Ghost Rider. Can you tell a story?" I would do my damnedest to make the best Ghost Rider story I could, out of respect for the job and the character. Even though I don't really like Ghost Rider, I know a lot about Ghost Rider. I've read plenty of Ghost Rider's comics. I've read all the different iterations of Ghost Rider. I think I could take a pretty decent swing at it. I think I can come up with a good story that would respect the character, and you would never know that I really didn't like it. Really didn't like the character. You never know. And I think that's what professionals who get jobs in comics should do. They should make an attempt to write the character to the best of their ability because they respect the business, because they respect the character. There's still a lot of personal feelings. That's fine. It's that, are you going to let your personal feelings completely take over, take over the character? That's the question. So what about you? Are you with me on this? I think respect is more important than love or hatred. I think if you hate a character, but you respect the business, you respect the character, you can still crank out a pretty good story. To be fair, I do think it's harder. But I also would say if somebody does understand respect, if they understand respect for the business, if they understand respect for the character and what's come before them and their other creators, then if you truly hate a character, you wouldn't take the job in the first place. I read Green Lantern #1. Hal Jordan, how Jeff Thorne at one point, what he said about I hate Hal Jordan in the past in a tweet is irrelevant to that comic. If you read that comic, you would not get that impression. And frankly, that's what matters. By the way, keep in mind, this was an old tweet. Not that all matters, but if you're given a job, I think part of respect, if I got the job of Ghost Rider, I wouldn't say, "Great, I'm doing Ghost Rider," and then immediately go to Twitter and say, "Screw Ghost Rider. I hate this character. I hate this character, and you can read my comic of this character that I hate so much coming out in 1 month, but you'll love it. But I hate that character." I wouldn't do that because that would show disrespect for the company, for my creators, for the character. I can't change what I might have said in the past, but that's my take on it. You may disagree, and that's fine, but that's my take on it. Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.